All right, welcome to another episode of Live with a Cork in the Road. I'm Kelly, and I am interviewing people of the Southeast wine industry who are putting Atlanta on the map. Today, I'm so excited. I have Melissa Davis. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
She is a certified sommelier and beverage director in Atlanta, but she was also recently named the 2018 Atlanta Rising Star Sommelier by Star Chefs. Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
That's a huge accomplishment. So tell me, you're a rising star in wine. Why wine? How did you find your way to this career path?
It's kind of a funny story. So my very first job from the beginning has always been in customer service. I worked at a tea shop called Tivana long before they were owned by Starbucks. That was my very first job. It was one of those strange retail places where you're doing nothing all day long, and then Christmas comes, you're like, what's happening? We all kind of fed off the chaos of that a little bit, and then ended up actually working for Starbucks not long later. But the draw of customer service and customer interaction, I'm kind of a social butterfly, so that's always something that I've been drawn to. And in college, I worked at a little restaurant called Figo in Decatur. It was actually my first restaurant job, and then I was on the just past opening team of Cakes and Ale in Decatur, and I was there for many, many years. And that's kind of where everything as far as alcoholic beverages for me got started. I was hired as a hostess. They were like, no, you work too hard. We'll make you a food runner. And I was like, cool. And kind of worked my way up through the ranks. There wasn't a whole lot that happened in that restaurant that I really didn't have some part in over the many, many years of being there. So I ended up behind the bar, and we moved locations. And so that was my liquor beginning, right? Liquor and beer and, obviously wine. Billy had a really beautiful palate and always kind of forced people out of the box a little bit. So we never had traditional offerings. It wasn't like, hey, come in and have a glass of Chardonnay. We didn't have Chardonnay. So it was learning how to sell people things they weren't used to drinking when I knew nothing about wine whatsoever. So my first foray is if Chardonnay doesn't work, what's going to work for Chardonnay? And I left there, went to work for the General Mirror. And while I was there, I'd graduated college at this point. I was like, man, I've been doing this for a long time. And I feel like if I'm going to do it, I should do it right. And so I was on the path of, I can do everything. I've got a college diploma. I'm like, the world is my oyster, right? And ended up wanting to be the best that I could be at what I was doing. It's I'm going to be a certified Cicerone. I want to be a specialist in spirits. I want to be a certified sommelier, on and on and on. And because I felt like I had enough of a background already in liquor and beer, I actually started with wine. And that's how it actually kind of got started. I was like, I need to know more about that because I don't know yet. And as I started studying and really kind of got wrapped up in the world of wine and the extreme rabbit hole that is all of the information you can learn, I never really looked back, and I just kept going down the path. And I've had the pleasure of working for some really incredible humans along the way. So I left the General Mirror and went to work for Nick Quinones at Woodfire Grill. And he is my hands down mentor. I took him with me to Star Chefs because he was my person. He's an incredibly humble somm. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He's amazing on the floor. And it was just everything I wanted to surround myself with. So I did that for a little while, and then actually went back to Cakes and Ale and was doing a lot of wine stuff. I was back there when I passed my certified exam. And so it was nice to be home with all of my, the regulars that I had built over the years and all that. So that was lovely. And yeah, I've kind of bounced around from place to place and had a lot of experiences with a lot of lovely people. And yeah, wine is one of the most incredibly enchanting things in the whole world. It's different every single year. The grapes that you think are grown somewhere else, and they change your mind entirely about what it is you thought something was. And I think that's really, really what draws me to wine as opposed to, liquor and beer, which can be manipulated on a daily basis. But wine, you get one chance. You get one harvest. That's all you got, And so I love it very much.
You have a beautiful path to where you've ended up. I love that you call wine a rabbit hole and it sucks you in, but you also have a lot of experience in other aspects of the restaurant and dining world. And I think that's really valuable here. So why did you stay in Atlanta? Why Atlanta for wine as you have all these other experiences?
Well, it's interesting to be part of Cakes and Ale, right? There wasn't a whole lot. I mean, there was a lot going on in Atlanta, obviously. There's always been, a little bit of movement and hustle and bustle as far as restaurants are concerned. But, building one of the best restaurants in the country, really kind of makes you appreciate the people around here. And, I've done a lot of traveling. I've traveled all over Europe. all over the United States, both for work and for pleasure. And I'm actually from Oklahoma, which is like a whole nother thing. But I've lived here for a very long time. I'm not going to lie. There was a time when I wanted to just like up and move and go experience life somewhere else. And then I started thinking about my path and how I've gotten to where I am. And I didn't want to leave Atlanta and like not seeing how it goes. These are my people. Like the hospitality that's here is unlike anywhere else in the entire world. And I think that experience is something very special and something I definitely wanted to like see through to like the end.
And you are now not only seeing it through, but I think you are making waves and you are leading it. Now, for people that don't know much about Staple House, they should know it, first of all, because it's awesome. But it also was named Best New Restaurant in America by Bon Appetit magazine in 2016. So you were there for that.
I was there just after. So I started in January of 2017. So that was about 5 months after they achieved all the beauty and grandeur of, Bon Appetit and all of the first James Beard nods and all of that. I'm actually in the process of opening a wine bar now. But the Staple House family is very, very precious to me, and the relationships that I have with them are some of the most incredible things ever. Jen and I were just texting back and forth the other day, and they're like family. And so dining at that level is always challenging. There's the constant pressure all the time, but you couldn't ask to do it with more talented human beings that are surrounding you all day. Like Jen Heidinger and Kara are two of the most incredibly hospitable, loving, caring, generous human beings on the planet. And Ryan Smith is so incredibly talented, and to be surrounded by that creativity all the time is a really, really beautiful experience. And you're doing something that's so much bigger than yourself. So even on like the hard days when service was just hard and people were kind of mean, like at the end of the day, that everything that you're doing is going to benefit everybody else in the entire city and very soon in the Southeast. And that's incredibly important. I think it brings a lot of meaning to stuff that can sometimes seem meaningless. People don't really think about service as important as it is, especially when you're in the middle of doing it. You're in the weeds, you're running around, there's tables everywhere and food and like run food here, take that bus, let's do that. There's always something to do. And it doesn't always feel like the most meaningful work. And so putting such an intense meaning behind it is really, really incredible.
If you're not at Staple House, they have a lot of support for you going forward. Tell me about this wine bar that you are opening here in Atlanta.
Yeah, so I work for Revelator Coffee now, which is kind of funny, full circle, literally, because we do tea, we do coffee, and so I'm actually the corporate beverage director for the company. So I'm running all of the liquor programs in Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana. We're opening some markets in Los Angeles and doing stuff in like Charleston and Tennessee too. But so I was actually brought on to open a wine bar. So we've been working on the project since February of last year, which is crazy. Hopefully we're soon to open. It's, construction is what construction is. But yeah, so I took on the project because, I sat down with Eli Kirstein, who's my direct boss, and Josh Owen, who owns Revelator. And we were talking about just the industry and what Atlanta has and what it's missing. And one of those things is a place where you can go to sit and have a bottle of wine without having to go to a like fine dining restaurant to get a really great wine list. And obviously a few other places have opened between then and now, which is great. But, the more the merrier. We're all in this together, and success is based on everybody. And so, yeah, I wanted to make a place where people could just come in, sit at a giant bar, have a great glass of wine, some food, and just in a relaxing environment where wine isn't pretentious, where it isn't exclusive, where it is the thing that is cared for and taken care of. I've worked in a lot of restaurants, everybody has a lineup, right? Where you get together and your whole staff sits. They're talking about the guests that are coming in that day and the food that is changing or any allergies or things like that, service notes from the day before. And I've sat through so many in so many different restaurants where beverage was given 5 minutes. Out of a 45-minute lineup, you get 5 minutes to talk about something that makes you the most money in your restaurant. And education is something that's extremely important to me. Before I got the wine thing, I've always wanted to be in education in some way, shape, or form. I played music for many years. I thought I would be a music professor and all these things. I was like, I'm going to teach everybody everything all the time. And so, knowledge is power. It's the one thing no one can ever, ever take away from you. And especially when it comes to like the restaurant industry is so full of sometimes transient people. So they're kind of like, I'm doing this on the side, but this is what I really want to do. And I believe that you should be great at whatever you're doing, even if it isn't the thing that you want to do forever. And wine is completely limitless in that it's not just information for now, but if you go get a big wig job and you go out to dinner with some fancy clients, now you have more information to get better wine on the table to make you look more experienced. And so I wanted to build a place where that was the focus, where wine can be taught and learned. I want to put everyone through the court. I want everyone to have the opportunity to feel like they're supported in that way. And yeah, that's the plan.
You are truly opening the door for so many people to try new wines. I personally will be one of your first customers at this wine bar in Atlanta. Yeah. Having been to other places in the South, I've actually heard people say, what is the wine bar scene like in Atlanta? And I, for a while, had to kind of say, you can go do flights at restaurants or that kind of thing. So I am absolutely thrilled to hear about this project. And you mentioned that you have taken the certified sommelier exam. What is that experience like? How does it impact the training that you had in kind of a restaurant setting? And then how does it prepare you for further educating people?
I will, again, mentorship during the process is extremely, extremely important. Again, when I started, it was all a pipe dream of like wanting to learn everything. So I picked up a copy of the Wine Bible, and like getting started is really kind of hard because you never know really where to start, right? There's so much information. And so the experience on its own was definitely life-changing in a lot of ways. I learned more about myself in the course of the year and a half, like studying and sitting and studying and sitting, and you push yourself in ways you never thought you would push yourself. I was working 14 hours a day in a restaurant. I was waking up at 8 a.m. in the morning, studying for 3 hours, studying in between services, studying all night long. And that's how I lived for like 2 years, was just studying. I do think it definitely makes you more prepared when you're first getting started in tastings, because a lot of things are coming at you all the time. Information wise prepares you much more, I think, than just reading books are concerned, because it requires so much of you, especially like service standards and things like that. Learning how to blind taste. I don't like it. I don't think that it's the most impressive thing in the entire world. It's not my favorite, but it does teach you how to evaluate wine and see if it's sound. And that's what's most important. To me, it's not the most important thing to know out of nowhere what's in your glass in front of you. Is it good? And what makes it so? And is it a high quality wine or not? I think those are really important traits to have and skills to have in the long run. In the restaurant, it definitely makes you more diligent, much more attention to what's happening at tables, how you're treating them, how you're serving them. Proper service of wine can be one of those things. At my intro exam, the group of master sommeliers who were proctoring said they had gone out to dinner the night before, and a woman had opened a bottle of champagne, like facing the bottle at them. And, the CO2 will blow off, and there's sometimes smoke, and she blew on it like a smoking gun of the champagne. It tickled me pink, but some people like to have a little bit more fun with their wine. But yeah, I think it's an excellent path to go down to really push yourself. And it's definitely nerve wracking. I had more than a couple anxiety attacks along the way about freaking out about whether or not I would pass. And yeah, I think it's a really great starting point for anyone to really dip their toes in the water, and then they can take it even further.
And you have to build that personal education along the way while you are doing the formal education. As someone who managed a winery, I never had the formal class training, but in the process, I have discovered a lot of ways to teach people about wine and also building your own personal preferences. So along the way, you're taking these classes, you're learning blind tasting, but you like certain things that you might not see on different tasting menus and things like that. So how do you balance your personal preference in wine with the challenge of building a wine list for a restaurant or for your wine bar, meeting the customer's preferences at the same time?
So I have forever been under the impression that, and this is a Bobby Stuckeyism, who's a master sommelier in Colorado. I've seen him speak a lot, and at BevCon a few years ago, he was talking about how hospitality begins at the wine list. And at the end of the day, I think the experience of dining in a restaurant is the same as a wine list. Like, we're working in it, but we're not always experiencing it. And so your wine list has to be built for your guests and also interwoven with the things that you really want to sell and want to see. And so it is a very, very thin line. As a wine buyer, you can look at lists and tell when someone is building a list for themselves and when they're building a list for the community around them. And it's obvious. It's always very, very clear. And I think that's really important. I think always in terms of the guest experience, it isn't me sitting down in my restaurant every single day. obviously I'm in it every day and I'm, nitpicking on all the little things, but the guest experience, the view from each and every single table, like what does it look like when a bartender isn't paying attention? That speaks in the wine list as well. And you really have to take into account what people want and also what you want them to have. And it's a very, very delicate balance.
And I think that if you are successful with that, you really do hit a good happy medium of that balance. So you're happy serving your list and the customers are happy learning something new. So what are your customers asking for? What are some of the things that people have said that they want to see more of or want to try that you are now incorporating into your opportunity to build your list?
It kind of varies from place to place. So, I've worked in Decatur and that group of people want something completely different than people in Midtown. I worked at One Midtown Kitchen for about 2 years and that was a lot of, I want New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, I want Oak Chardonnay, which is not my thing. So I find my version of that and what I think is the best in that category to offer them what they want while still feeling good about it. And that's kind of where you have to meet the balance. Old Fourth Ward, at Staple House, everyone is always willing to have a crazy experience because you don't really know what you're walking into, right? Especially now that they're back in the tasting menu. It's, when I left, it was blind. So people had no idea what they were eating or drinking. And it really created this opportunity of lots of conversation and getting people out of the box in a way they probably wouldn't have done elsewhere. So I'd imagine that Hazel Jane's will be somewhere right in the center. The natural wine craze that's happening right now is not my favorite of the the trends that's happening. I think a wine should be very well made and should be very delicious. And if it happens to be natural, that's a positive. I think that organics and biodynamics are a far more sustainable farming plan in general and actually lead to well-maintained wines as opposed to just not putting anything in it for the sake of not putting anything in it. So there's that. So it'll be, a little bit of everything. That's my goal.
And you get to kind of feel what people are giving you feedback on as well. Because as you're building the list and you're creating a new space, I'm sure people will say, hey, do you have this? Or I really want to try this South African wine that I know nothing about, or whatever it is. You're going to be in a really cool place with your education and your background to introduce people to new things. And I was very curious about your approach to food pairing with wine. I know you said you're going to have food also at the wine bar. Are you a rule breaker or do you follow certain rules? What's your philosophy on food pairing?
So I always start with, obviously starting with the protein is a good way to start, but I always, nitpick really small, flavor bursts in every dish. I have done a lot of blind pairings as far as I haven't tasted the food or haven't experienced little pieces of it. And so best case scenario is you're tasting everything and you're enjoying each element of the dish. I always like to pull something that is if this is the protein, the accoutrements that come with it are just as important as the protein. And so I start at the protein and then work my way out and usually find something that'll pull out the little nuances of the accoutrements with the dish. And it can lead to some really exciting pairings because if you're looking at a fish dish, but with the fish dish is something extremely savory, that opens up the world of lighter reds, heavier champagnes, things that have a little bit more oak to them that you might not have chosen before. And so that's kind of how I do it. I don't follow a whole lot of rules as far as pairing is concerned because I want each dish to speak for itself. And just because there's a classic pairing doesn't mean that it's the right pairing for what you have.
It's a really good way to look at it. So there are rules, but you can definitely break rules and you're still going to be okay. You're still going to find some magical combinations. I'm just like you with that, where I think about wine as kind of the extra sauce or an extra seasoning to a dish. So I'm not just looking at the core, but I'm also looking, what can we accentuate from that? And I think that's a really fun way to play with the wine and food combination. So how are you continuing your personal education in wine as now you're in it for your career? Are you reading online? Do you have blogs you follow, social media? How are you personally growing in your career?
I'm actually, obviously because education is important to me, I like to see how other people do it as well. So I'm currently studying for the Wine Scholar Guild because they are French focused and they go region by region. So you can be a Champagne master and Alsatian master and all that. So I'm going down that path right now. I'll probably test for that in the next month or so. So there's that, but I'm constantly reading all the time. Every single time. I also have every book on the planet and have read most of them cover to cover, most of them twice. But anytime a new wine is put in front of me, a rep brought me Malvar the other day, and I was like, I have no idea what this is. I've never heard of it. So I pull out Jancis Robinson's wine grapes, flipping through it. So constantly rereading, constantly buying books on subjects I don't always gravitate toward. Obviously, like French wine is kind of where the greatest amount of my knowledge lies. And so I'm always peppering in like some Spain and some Italy and like delving into the crazy that is Switzerland and and things like that, which keeps it interesting all the time. As long as you're keeping yourself interested, you'll always keep growing. I'm a member of the Guild of Sommeliers, and so they're every like week or so they do, in case you missed it, this is all the news you need to read. So I do that. I read lots of 750 Daily, lots of Punch. The Somm Journal, of course, is a really, really great reference point for sommeliers. I picked up for Hazel Janes a new periodical called Pipette. The woman who writes Pipette, her name is Rachel Singer. And so this is volume 1, just like all about like natural wine, female winemakers, all of the goods. And so I'll sell these at Hazel Janes, which is awesome. They're amazing. They're packed full of information on everything that, you know, little tidbits here, winemaker specials. It's incredible. It's a really great reference. So I'm excited to have that.
And it does showcase how there's always a fresh perspective, even if it's a topic you know well. It could be someone else's interpretation of it or their visual. And you're speaking my wine language because I just came back from Burgundy and I am so inspired by French wine. So please put a lot of Burgundy wine on your list, okay? Because I think it just teaches a lot of things about nuances. So what do you drink and enjoy at home? You're obviously working in it every day. But when you get home from a long day being on your feet and teaching everyone and showcasing your knowledge, what are you drinking? What are you liking right now?
Well, if I'm drinking wine, I'm usually drinking some sort of white wine. Someone was very surprised this the other day that I'm a 99.9% white wine drinker, like all of the time. I drink a lot of Chenin Blanc. It's the chameleon grape. I love it so much. No matter where it goes, it's always something different. It has so many perspectives on itself. So lots of Chenin. But in all honesty, like when I get off of work, I'm drinking High Life and Jameson.
You sound like a lot of the winemakers I've spoken to. They tell me they drink beer at home, and I love it because when I was working in the cellar, I was smelling wine all day, and the last thing I wanted to do when I went home is smell it. And I also was smelling a lot for defects. So I wasn't always enjoying a full glass of wine because I was analyzing it and dissecting it. So I'm sure you have those moments where you're like, I just want a high life, put my feet up. What are some of the things that you think are next for Atlanta in the wine scene? You think there'll be more wine bars like what you're doing? Do you think we'll have more events? What are you seeing for Atlanta and the Southeast?
I definitely think, you know, with BevCon moving from Charleston to Los Angeles, I do think it left a massively large beverage gap here in the Southeast for sure. There are so many incredible, talented sommeliers in Atlanta, in Charleston, in Nashville, all over the Southeast. And there's not really a venue for any of us to like kind of get together and talk about that stuff. And that's why BevCon was so incredibly important to us. Obviously it still is. It's an incredible convention. So I think hopefully someone will come and kind of fill that gap again and let Atlanta be the home for that. Like, we're such an incredible convention city. Like, there's so many hotels and so many places. And then, you know, if you put all of us in one room, the power that can happen would be incredible. I do hope more wine bars come. You know, I do believe that we are all working in this together. The more of us there are, the more we share, the more we'll actually get and be able to grow. And it's true with like what we're able to get as wine buyers, what we're able to purchase. You know, if I get all of the 2 cases that come into the state, we'll never get more than 2 cases. If I share that a little bit and it seems more peppered, we'll end up getting more and more allocations for things. And I think that's really important. Sharing is caring. At the end of the day, the best part of this is that Atlanta is why we're here, and Atlanta is what we need to lift up and do that while lifting each other. So come on down, wine bars. Let's do this.
Come on down, distributors, importers. Every time I go out to California, I get a question from a small production winery in Sonoma saying, I really want to get my wine in Atlanta. It seems like a lot of people like wine there. And it makes me smile. It makes me proud to see what's happening here. And actually, it was a fellow friend of ours, a distributor, who even introduced me to you. So it is that combination of all levels of the industry here, supporting each other, spreading the word, sharing the special cases that come in. I love that. So what does social media do for you and that connectivity with the wine world, either here in Atlanta or outside of Atlanta?
I think despite all of the bad things that come with social media and people not having actual human interactions, I think it's a really great way to connect with people that you might not ever connect with. I think social media is a really fun and can be a really fun and playful platform to get to know each other and like see little snippets of how people go about doing things. And yeah, I mean, getting Pipette was literally me messaging Rachel Singer on Instagram being like, hey girl, hey, I want to sell your magazine. And she was like, awesome, great, come on down. And like, that's how it goes. And I think it's a great space to really connect with people. I think it's awesome.
Well, I can't wait to see what you do here in Atlanta. You are a leading wine lady for the industry, and it's a pleasure to meet you. Anything else that we should know about Atlanta coming up? Where can they learn more about your projects?
Hazel Janes is on Instagram. You can follow us at Hazel Janes ATL. We're working on building the website out. I don't really post a whole lot to my own social media, so you can follow me if you want, but it's not that exciting.
It's going to be you drinking High Life at home with your feet up.
Watching Grey's Anatomy, drinking a beer. But yes, I plan on posting quite often, so I'm in charge of our social media for the restaurant, and so I'll be posting as things start to happen, like little finishes and like look instructions happening, and stuff like that. So follow us on Instagram. Yeah, that's a really great way to keep up with us.
Well, we will definitely be drinking together in the near future, and I appreciate your time. Thank you for putting us on the map and bringing your knowledge to everyone here to help us drink more wine that we enjoy drinking.
Thank you. Bye.